Hi everyone and welcome back. In today's video we are sewing not one, but two Victorian petticoats. Wish me luck! So now that we have our chemise and drawers made as well as our corset, it's time for the rest of the undergarments. I'm going to start off by making petticoats, and I am making two petticoats. I've got all the pieces cut out for both, and I am using two different types of fabric. Now you can't really tell that they're different, but take my word for it, they are different. Both are white cotton, so in that respect they're the same. This fabric that is currently pinned to the pattern piece is a white poplin, and then this is a slightly thicker, slightly stiffer cotton twill. And basically I'm making the petticoats more or less identical. One I will be doing pin tacks, and then the other I'm not. For the petticoat that I'm making with the white poplin, I'm actually going to be using this quilting cotton as the ruffle layer. So, or pardon me, for the flounce layer. So this petticoat is made in three sections. You've got the main portion of the petticoat, you've got a flounce, and then you've got a ruffle at the bottom. So I'm actually going to use this contrasting cotton for my flounce, so that middle section. And I am using Truly Victorian. This is pattern 170, Victorian Petticoats. This is the first time I'm using a Truly Victorian pattern. I haven't used them in the past, so yeah. I've heard good things about the company though, so yeah, we'll see how it goes. And I've tackled the first challenge already. I printed out my PDF pattern, I taped it all together. Yeah, that took a while. That was the work of a couple of evenings, to tell you the truth. But it's done. My fabric is cut out, and we're ready to get sewing. And now you're being quiet? Oy vey. Filming with birds, do not recommend. So to get started, I started by marking out the darts. For this pattern, the front piece has 2 darts and each of the back panels has 1 dart. So that's 4 darts per petticoat, so 8 darts total that I'm going to be making. To mark them out, I used my awl to make holes through the pattern paper, and then a fabric marking pen to mark the fabric through those holes. After that, I removed the pattern paper and used a ruler to draw a line matching up all the dots. Then it was time to pin them and sew them. And once I'd finished sewing the darts, it was time to attach the 2 back panels to the front panel. And of course, sewing 8 darts means that I had to make a mistake with at least one of them. And I've just realized which one I made a mistake with. Yep, I sewed the dart onto the wrong side of the fabric. Oh well, time for the stitch ripper. And once I had the dart re-sewing onto the correct side of the fabric this time, it was back to pinning the side seams. And what is pinned must be sewn. And after I'd sewn all 4 of the side seams, remember, I'm making 2 petticoats right here, it was time to sew the center back. This pattern, you leave an opening at the top for where you're putting the petticoat on, and here I am top stitching down the facing of that opening, reinforcing it at the bottom point with a few repeat rows to finish off that raw edge. And that's the placket sewn in the back of both of my petticoats. On to the flounce. So I'm starting in on the flounces. There are 4 pieces of flounce for each of the petticoats. The instructions are to sew all 4 pieces together at the side seams to form a big loop, but because there are tucks on the flounce as well, I'm actually marking out the tucks first using some good old-fashioned tailor's chalk. It's working out really well in that because this is a PDF version of the pattern, I'm actually being able to use the pattern itself as my straight edge for marking the flounces. So I've already done 1, and this is my second one, and I have 2 more to go after this. But as you can see, I've just folded over the pattern pieces, and it's a stiff enough paper that I can just use it as my straight edge. And because this is the cotton twill fabric, it is a stiff enough fabric that I'm actually just marking the tucks on the one side of this fabric rather than flipping it over and doing both sides. It folds so nice and crisply that I think that's going to be fine. I'll just be matching up the lines from one piece to the next. So I think it should work out just fine. Hopefully I do not regret that decision later on, but you know, there we go. And this is the one step in this process where it will be different between the 2 petticoats, because I'm actually not using the white poplin on the other petticoat to make my flounces. I'm using a contrasting cotton, and I'm not doing tucks in it. That one I've actually opted to do the shorter flounce that doesn't have the tucks. So finally a little bit of difference between 2 white petticoats. All right, let's get marking. And we're done. Time to start sewing some side seams. So this is the flounce for the poplin petticoat, and as you can see, piecing is period. So my camera battery died, but I did keep working for a little while. So I finished the side seams on all the flounces. I also serged those seams, and I got the pin tucks all folded and pinned into place on the twill fabric. So now that I have the cotton twills suitably booby trapped with sharp pointy objects, let's get sewing again. Did I mention that this was booby trapped with pins? I'm poking myself every few seconds with pins. So much fun. Do you remember me complaining when I was making the drawers about sewing pin tucks forever? Well, I spoke too soon, because sewing the pin tucks onto this flounce was actually sewing pin tucks forever. Now before we iron our pin tucks, I get to do a little unboxing. The iron I had was over 20 years old, so this one was on sale for 50% off. Just a slight upgrade from my 20-plus-year-old iron. Let's take this baby out for a spin, shall we? How satisfying is that? Okay, that was worth it. This thing, oh my goodness. Yeah, I'm so glad I finally upgraded my iron. And with that done, it was time to sew the gathering threads. 2 rows of gathering stitches on both of the flounces. I chose to sew the gathering stitches into sections to hopefully make this process a little bit more manageable, and on the whole, I think that did work well. And then it was time to pin the gathered flounces to the body of the petticoat. And with the flounces completed, it was time to move on to the ruffles. There were 4 pieces of flounces. There are 8 pieces of ruffles. So to get started, I pinned together and then sewed all of the side seams on those 8 pieces. And then it was time to turn and turn again the bottom hem of the ruffles. This would become the bottom hem of the actual petticoat. And of course, once it was turned and ironed, I needed to sew it. I'm not actually even sure what I was unpicking here, but obviously I had made a mistake somewhere. And once that was sewn, it was time to sew the gathering stitches. Again, 2 rows that I chose to do in segments, which I had reason to be grateful for later. And once I had gathered the ruffles up, it was time to pin them to the flounces. So it's after 10 o'clock at night. I'm just finishing to pin the ruffle onto the second petticoat, And guess what I've discovered? Somehow I managed to flip one section of the ruffle. So it's backwards. Yeah, it's backwards. So, I've decided probably to make things harder for myself in that instead of taking off the entire ruffle, I am just going to unpick that one panel, redo the hem on that section, and sew in the side seams again. I am probably going to regret that decision. But right now, I am not willing to take out all of those pins and redo all of that gathering. I'm just not. So, wish me luck. I guess the one saving grace is that when I did serge my seam, I chose to serge the two halves of it separately rather than serge the two parts together. So at least I will still have the serged edge and I'm not having to try to deal with that. Small things. Alright, now before I sew it, let's make sure it's actually going to be done the right way around this time. And it's good to there. Okay, let's re-sew this seam, re-stitch these gathering threads, and finish pinning this petticoat. And with the ruffles finally attached, it was time to work on the waistband. After sewing the waistband to the body of the petticoat, I folded the top raw edge over, and then once that was folded and ironed, I then folded the entire waistband over the raw edge of the petticoat body to encase it, and then yes, I machine sewed it into place. And while I worked on finishing off the waistband, it was definitely time for a tea break. With the waistband complete, it was time to thread it with some ties. I was just using a cotton twill tape. I believe this was a 1/4 inch wide cotton twill tape. I used the same cotton twill tape for both of my petticoats for the drawstring waists. And a finishing touch. On the poplin petticoat, to tie the brown of the flounce fabric in, I got this beading lace, replaced the white ribbon that was in it with a brown ribbon that matched the flounce material, and added it just at the top of the flounce. And they're done. We have 2 completed petticoats. I am kind of tired of sewing white on white, I have to admit it. That being said, I still need to make my corset cover, which is white, and my shirtwaist, which is also going to be white. So yeah, I swear there is color coming. There will be garments in the near future that have color, I promise. Just not quite yet. I haven't haven't actually decided whether I'm going to make the corset cover next or I might be making the bustle pad next. Yet to be determined. We will see. So in the meantime, while I make up my mind on that, let's take these petticoats for a twirl, shall we? You knew I wasn't going to be able to resist that, right? Oh well. On to the next project.